Hi everyone, welcome to the second edition of Court at Home in Providence. And I am at my home in Providence. Now last week we had some glitches with our sound system, and hopefully we have them worked out this week. But nevertheless, we still reached 250,000 people, and we got many more questions that we're going to try to get to today. So without further ado, let's get to the first question. And the first question is a very, very special one because it has brought back memories that I am so fond of and something that was such a significant event in my life. And the question is from Glenn Graney from Springfield, Massachusetts. And Glenn asked the question, what is your most prized possession? Now, in your mind, you say to yourself, what could be his most prized possession? You know, maybe a gift that he received from someone, maybe a piece of jewelry, maybe a jacket, maybe a pair of sneakers. What could be his most prized possession? Maybe a love letter. Anyway, I could go on and on and on. It is none of those things. But my prized possession goes all the way back to 1942, I believe, either 1941 or 1942. And my dad, who was a laborer at the time, doing laboring work, just brought my brother and I to a baseball field in East Providence, Rhode Island. And the event that was taking place at the field that day was that Babe Ruth, who had since retired, but was now trying to earn some extra money, so he would go to different locations putting on hitting expositions. You know, so he was there and he was going to put on an exhibition that evening. But my dad, for some reason, brought us there in the afternoon because he heard that Babe Ruth would be making an appearance to see the field that afternoon. And sure enough, I don't recall it because I was too young. I was either 5 or 6 years old, but my dad told me the story in vivid detail. So my dad was holding my brother's hand and my hand, and we were walking on the field. And all of a sudden, believe it or not, Babe Ruth saw 2 young kids, and he came over to my dad and rustled my hair a little bit and asked my dad, "Are these your kids?" And my dad says, "Yes." And he asked, "What is your name?" And I said, "Frank." And my brother, "What is your name?" "Anthony." And Babe asked my dad, "What do you do for a living?" "Young man." He called my father young man. And they had my father related the conversation. And then unexpectedly, Babe Ruth yelled to the gentleman that was accompanying him and says, "Bring over a couple of baseballs." And sure, they brought over a couple of baseballs, and Babe Ruth autographed 2 baseballs, one for me and one for my brother. Yeah. And I kept that ball in pristine condition ever since 1942. And I still, since then, I've done a great deal of research. So I went down to the local newspaper, the Providence Journal, to their archives to check the day that Babe Ruth came here. And sure enough, there was a full-length feature of Babe Ruth's appearance here, and his wife was actually with him because they had pictures of his wife who was in the stands that day as he was putting on the exhibition. And the fact, the event itself, the fact that I was there and Babe Ruth, arguably one of, if not the greatest baseball player of all time, was there, and the fact that he actually autographed a baseball for me. And in this box, Babe Ruth autographed the ball and then placed it in this box. Unfortunately, since this is now, let me see, 42, that's 48, 68 years old, the top of the box came off. But this was the original box in which the baseball came, and it was a Howard baseball from Natick, Massachusetts, that was established in 1858. And this is the baseball. As you can see, it is still in pristine condition. Now, I kept the ball secluded for a long period of time, and often thought, should I have anyone else sign this baseball? And I was undecided. So finally, Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record. He was the first one to break his record. And so I made arrangements through a friend of mine to meet Hank Aaron at Fenway Park. Hank Aaron was playing for the Braves. And I made arrangements and went into the dugout, was able to get into the dugout, and Hank Aaron autographed the ball. Now I said, well, I have it. I have Babe Ruth, and I have the gentleman that broke his record on one baseball. And maybe I'll retire the ball. But really, there were two other signatures that I always wanted on the ball. And I want you to guess, who do you think they are? Now, I'm going to tell you in a second. But just in your mind, say, who else could he possibly want on that ball? Well, one was the splendid splinter, Ted Williams of the Boston Red Sox. And my son Frank was captain of the Harvard baseball team. And the Harvard baseball team during spring training was playing the Red Sox in Winter Haven, Florida. And I went down to Winter Haven and knew that Ted Williams would be there. And through my connection with the baseball team and the Boston Red Sox at the time, Ted Williams, and I have a beautiful picture. I should have it with, unfortunately, I don't today. Beautiful picture of Ted and I together, and Ted Williams signed the baseball. I still wanted one more signature. Are you guessing? Who could it possibly be? Okay, I'll tell you who it is. The Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio. And he actually was the toughest to get, but fortunately, through a mutual friend, I was able to make contact with Joe DiMaggio, and he contacted me and says, meet me at the Sheraton in New York, and I will sign the baseball for you. And so the day that we went to New York, I'll never forget it. I had three friends come with me, and we all went up to Joe DiMaggio's room, and when he opened the door, he was a little perplexed. He said, I didn't expect an entourage, but he was most gracious, and we had a wonderful conversation with Joe DiMaggio, and Joe DiMaggio signed the ball. And actually, as we were leaving his hotel suite, it was just about 11:45, and he said, where are you gentlemen going? And we said, we're going to lunch. And he suggested a restaurant in New York, and he told us how to get there. And we just sat down to have lunch, and next thing we knew, a waiter came over and said, are you gentlemen from Providence? And we said, yes. And he says, DiMaggio just called. He's going to come down and have lunch with you. And it was one of the more memorable lunches that I can ever remember, that we had lunch together. So I have this baseball that is so significant, obviously because of the names that are on it. And I don't think I'm ever going to put another name on here, but here is the first signature, the Babe Ruth. Second signature, Hank Aaron. Third signature, Ted Williams. And the fourth signature, the Yankee Clipper, Jolton Joe DiMaggio, right? So, and for many reasons, not so much sentimental value, but the fact that my dad was with my brother and I, you know, good man that he was, good father that he was. I still visualize him holding our hands and having Babe Ruth come over. And now there's a side story to this. One ball for me, one ball for my older brother. Well, we have a younger brother my younger brother actually is 12 years younger than I am. And so we had separated the baseballs. And so one day I came home and I says, you better give, my younger brother, I said, you better give Anthony his baseball. He said, what baseball? I said, the baseball with Babe Ruth's signature on it. He said, which one is that? And I said, the one that's in that box up in the dresser. And my younger brother said, Oh, he says, I've been playing ball with that. And he was playing ball on a concrete lot with the Babe Ruth signature ball. And when he showed me the ball, it was so scuffed that Babe Ruth's signature was completely obliterated. So I have mine. Unfortunately, my older brother doesn't have his, but he was a good sport about it. But somewhere there's a scuffed ball that had one of the greatest players of all time signature on it. But that is one of my most prized possessions. Second question is from Pramod Kumar from southern India, and he asked, I always believe that the apple does not fall far from the tree. What is your valuable tip for parents of this generation? Well, Mr. Kumar, every generation views its problems as the most exasperating and the most complex and the most insoluble. But human nature really doesn't change. Human nature is the same, has been the same since time immemorial. We have comments from Aristotle talking about petulant youth. But my feeling is that parents should teach youngsters responsibility. They should teach them to be respectful. They should teach them to listen to people. And the parents should listen to their children. They should encourage them. They should see if they have a particular talent and encourage them along the way to develop those talents. And probably the most interesting thing is that they should listen to their children. Too often parents dictate to their children what they think may be best for their children, not regarding what the talents of the child are. And so I think listening to a child is very, very important. Encourage them. Let them know that they are special. And tell them that you love them, and just teach them to be responsible by you being responsible. You can't be somebody who's completely irresponsible and try to teach your children to be responsible. Teach them to respect others. Teach them to treat people with dignity, And you do that by teaching them with example. And so I think, Mr. Kumar, that those are valuable lessons for all parents, I remember my parents, we lived in what was called a cold water flat, which meant we didn't have hot running water because they couldn't afford it. But we had all the love in the world from our parents. We knew that we were just loved, and my parents always encouraged us. And I think that's what you have to do with the children today. And I'm sure that you are, because you come from a great culture. Okay. Our next question is from Veronica Kim. And Veronica wants to know, what made you choose law as a profession? Well, this fits in very well with our previous question. I remember that I believe, I'm somewhere 10 years old. It was a particularly cold day, and we had a potbelly stove, and in order to keep warm, we had the oven door open, and the family, my mother, my father, and my brother were sitting in front of the open stove, and my father would talk about life, and my mother too. They would talk to us all the time. And for some strange reason, I remember this day so vividly. My dad started talking about what life was all about. And he said to me, put his hand on my shoulder, actually, and said, you're a good talker, and someday you're going to be a lawyer. He said, I want you to remember that. He said, and I want you to remember how we're living now. He said, look around here. He said, if I needed a lawyer today, I couldn't afford one because we don't have the money. He said, but I don't ever want you to forget that. He said, so when you become a lawyer, remember, you can't charge poor people. Don't worry, he said, you make it up with the rich people, but you can't charge poor people. But it was that spark, that inspiration, that I never, ever, for the rest of my life, ever wanted to be anything else except a lawyer. It was almost like an edict from on high. So he noticed my talent, and he encouraged me to pursue an occupation that he knew that I would be suitable for and would be suitable for me. So that's how I decided to become a lawyer. It was all because of the encouragement and the love and the understanding and the direction of my dad and my mom. Okay. Next question is from Brenda Ballard from Amarillo, Texas. And I might add, before I get to this one, is that in our law office, there's my oldest son, Frank, and my son, David, and my cousin, Anthony, all Caprios. And we have never charged anyone that couldn't afford it, ever. Nor will we ever, because it came down from on high, from my dad, one of the most decent men I ever met in my life, maybe the most decent. Okay, back to Brenda. When you are hard on someone in the courtroom, do you have any other information in front of you that helps you determine if you're being lied to, or are you just good at reading people? Now, I'm going to couple this question from Brenda Ballard with the same question from Peggy Eason from New York City. And Peggy asked, I would like to know how you keep people from taking advantage of you. Take advantage of me. Take advantage of the system. Sometimes people mistake kindness for weakness. How do you know when someone is really giving you a snow job? Peggy, I've had snow jobs. Some of the snow jobs I've heard in court, I need earmuffs and I need a big Mackinac to put on, right? And a heater. But the answer is that I actually have a record before me, their record for everything they've done in their life. I know if they've been speeding, I know if they've had tickets, I know if they have any other kind of record, and many of them are what we call repeat offenders. Means we call them frequent travelers. They're repeat offenders. So taking into account all of the experiences I've had on the bench, I've been on the bench for 35 years, I can usually tell a phony. Sometimes I can't. But it catches up to them. And I think by and large that most people are pretty honest. And there are some people who try to skirt the system. Next question is from Kathleen Landreth from Virginia. And Kathleen asked, where did you go to law school? Kathleen, that's a very interesting story, because I just finished telling the story, but my dad inspired me to be a lawyer. I never wanted to be anything else. And when I was in college, I was washing dishes at a restaurant when I was in college. And I realized in my junior year that I would not have enough money to go to law school. And it was a very traumatic time for me. You understand, my father was a hardworking guy. I don't think my father, during this period of time, ever made more than $50 a week. It was very low-paying jobs, and I was going to have to find a way to get the resources to go to law school. So I was able to recognize that in my junior year, and I decided that as a backup, I would take courses in education, so that in the event that I could not afford to go to law school, that I would be able to teach school and maybe then find a way to get to law school somehow. I didn't know how, somehow. Well, that's what happened. Finally, I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough money to go to law school. And one of the more traumatic experiences of my life is when I told my mother that I was going to teach school and that I would then go to law school after I made enough money. And my mother said to me, it's because of the money, isn't it? And I lied. I didn't want to make her feel, that she couldn't afford to send me, or that she wasn't doing her job, and I didn't want to tell my father that was the reason. So my mother went in her bedroom, and I could feel her dresser, feel her push the dresser drawer open, and she came out. She had 3 bank books with an elastic on them, and she said, take these. Take these. She said, your father never made much money, but there wasn't a week that went by that I didn't save some money. So I took the bank books and I looked at them. There were 3 of them. I think there was a total of a little over $2,000 in the bank books. Not nearly enough to go to school. But anyway, that was her life savings. And as I read through them, surely there were deposits every week, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1, $1.50. She would walk up to a bank every week just to save some money so that someday, only God knows what she thought she would be able to use it for. And here she was, her life savings, she wanted to give to me. Can you imagine? I felt so humbled. I mean, I was in a crying session. So anyway, I promised her. I said, Mom, I can't take that money. But I promised her that I would go on to law school. So that's what I did. So I taught school for 2 years to earn enough money. And then I went to law school at Suffolk University in Boston, Massachusetts. So I taught school in Providence. And after school, I drove to Boston nights. And I did that for 4 years while still teaching school. And I went, and I owe a great debt of gratitude to the Providence School Department and to Suffolk University Law for giving me that opportunity. And the next question is from Tristine Duggar, and the question is, are you a Christian? Yes, Christine, I am. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. I actually believe that religion plays a big part in everyone's life, regardless of what your religion is, right? I mean, I happen to be a Catholic. I practice Catholicism. I try to attend Mass regularly, and I try to do what they teach us is right. I find that what they teach us in our religion is what they teach in almost every other religion, so it's all a question of where your perspective is. I think it's an integral part of life to have a belief. And whatever that belief is to conform to that belief. And I know that I am immeasurably appreciative to some of the religious people that I had an opportunity to meet in my life who really kept our moral compass, my moral compass, calibrated. And I think a religion does that for us, in addition to so many other benefits of religion, but calibrates our moral compass. One of my more memorable experiences was I was with my dad and 2 of my 2 older sons, my son David and my son Frank, and we visited the Vatican. And the year that we visited the Vatican, Pope Paul VI was the Pope, and Paul VI's Secretary of State was Cardinal Giuseppe Caprio. Now, I don't think he was related to us, but my dad said that he was. So believe it or not, now this was in early 1970s, I think 1973 maybe. Went to the Vatican and just made myself known and gave them my name and said, I'd like to meet with Cardinal Giuseppe Caprio. And believe it or not, they escorted us right up to the Cardinal's office. He was Secretary of State, and the Pope's office was right next door. So I've had wonderful experiences with my religion, and I hope that all of you derive great benefit from your religion that I derive from mine. And with that, I think until next time, we're going to give you a reminder that so many of you have been so generous by giving to the Philomena Fund, which is the fund where you send money to the Providence Municipal Court that we use to help people. But the Philomena Fund right now is doing very well, but the court is not in session. So I would urge all of you that during this period of time that you make donations to a charitable organization in your community, whether it's helping our healthcare providers or helping adoptive parents or helping orphans or helping the poor, or helping the downtrodden, or helping people in soup kitchens, but that you help someone in your community, right, to have a better life. And thank you. See you next week.